Towers made of air, bridges without pillars, roofs that cover nothing. Materials and structures based on nature, bright and light. Lightweight construction is the architecture of the future. It saves material and energy, and above all, it's fascinating. The Gottlieb Daimler Stadium in Stuttgart was one of the first stadiums in Germany with a membrane roof made of plastic, light as a sail. One of the most significant construction engineers of our time, Jörg Schleich, is convinced that textile roofs create a good atmosphere in the stadium. The client authority had initially argued for sheet metal because of financial reasons.
Manfred Rommel, who was the mayor at the time, was good enough to call me into the council meeting to ask me what should be done. So I told him they should put the membrane roof on the stadium because it'd create a better mood. If they put a metal roof on it, that'd cause riots. Then they'd need the police, and financing the police over 10 years would cost a lot more than a membrane roof. Well, Mayor Rommel is known to be tolerant and he has a sense of humour, so he laughed out loud. The whole council laughed, and they said the story was so good they'd go for the membrane roof.
That was in 1993. At the time, the grandstands around the pitch were completely roofed over. 34,000 square meters of PVC-coated polyester are suspended from steel cables. The roof weighs only 13 kilograms per square meter. The membrane filters the sunlight so that the interior is light despite the roof's expanse. The model for the construction was the spoked wheel, which everyone knows from bicycles. The roof in Stuttgart has since been a model for many stadiums all the way to Malaysia and Korea, an export hit.
The spoke wheel is a very ingenious example of lightweight construction because the rim is stabilized very effectively with minimal effort, with very thin pre-stressed spokes. They can also be used horizontally to give extra strength to pipes, or they can be affixed to the outside like we did with this stadium, so that this outer ring lies on the stands. The inside part is replaced by a steel cable, and the result is a light, highly durable roof, capable of withstanding strong winds and large amounts of snow.
One of the favorites was the design by the group Think with the architect Raphael Vinoli. Reminiscent of the original towers, the idea was to build two transparent steel-framed towers. The plan was a world cultural center, a meeting place and a symbol of remembrance. Inside the towers, suspended platforms for gardens and cultural facilities. Right at the top, at a height of 416 meters, a spectacular view. A lightweight construction par excellence. That was one of the main reasons the experience of Schleich, Bergermann and Partners was solicited.
And then they asked me how these two tubular towers could even be built. How could such tubes be welded at 400 meters? And so we explained how that could be done, that it could all be put together on the ground and not up in the air, and that they could be constructed by placing each new component below the previous one, thus pushing the tower upwards. So I think I was able to demonstrate to the jury that Raphael Vignoli's ideas were doable and that this would be a very good and interesting construction.
This design won over the competition commission. The New York Times announced the victory, but then politicians became involved and everything changed. This is what the skyscraper replacing the Twin Towers will look like now, the Freedom Tower, a design by star architect Daniel Libeskind. The mayor and governor lobbied for him against the competition jury. An argument about details and who would be doing the work ensued. But one thing was clear, Schleich, Bergermann and partners would also work on this construction.
It really is a great challenge to work on this building here in Manhattan, which is probably the most significant building in the city, in America, and in the entire world. Think about it. The Freedom Tower will be built here, and we're designing the antenna, which will be a kind of sculpture and also a beacon for the tower.
The New York architecture company SOM, under David Childs and head designer Jeffrey Holmes, have been commissioned with the construction of the Freedom Tower.
32? 36? No, 32.
The original designs have undergone constant revision and have become quite different.
This lighted building here is the Freedom Tower itself, and it begins with a 200-foot square base. So the building rises to 1,368 feet here, which was the height of the original buildings, and from there the antenna, the sculptural antenna, takes it up to the 1,776 feet at the very top.
The beacon of freedom will be as high as a television tower. Schleich, Bergermann and partners are developing an antenna that can transmit radio waves while withstanding storms, earthquakes and extremes of temperature, and of course it also has to be lightweight.
Here we have these fiberglass sandwich elements. Fiberglass is an extremely strong material with the same strength as steel, but with only a fraction of the weight. So it's an innovative, high-performance material, just like the Kevlar cables. They're approximately 4 times as strong as regular steel, but are very much lighter. If you take all that into account, this antenna can be classed as lightweight construction.
Erreichen jetzt den Bahnhof Berlin Hauptbahnhof.
A glass palace for trains. Engineers and technicians from 30 countries spent 10 years working on it. In May 2006, the new Central Station in Berlin was inaugurated in the middle of a city that never in its history had had a central station. The result is a gigantic transport hub and a shining monument of glass and steel. The architects wanted to revive the idea of the legendary stations of the cosmopolitan European cities.
The Berlin Central Station is the fulfillment of an age-old railway dream that could never be implemented in this way. In other words, have the north-south and east-west lines cross in the middle of a big city. The north-south line is underground. This is the complete opposite of lightweight construction because that doesn't work for tunnels. It's all very solid. The east-west line, with its above-ground station section, is lightweight construction. For 150 years, every engineer's tried to use steel and glass in lightweight construction, and today you can really take that to extremes.
8,000 panes of glass now cover the new roof, and every pane is of a different size. The cut was calculated by a computer, and then the pane was made and marked with a number so that it could be put exactly in the place it was intended for. Since there are no steam trains anymore, there is no need for a high roof to remove the smoke. The risk of the flat curved roof, It could easily fall in at the top and away to the side. The solution in Berlin, 85 kilometers of steel cables surround the construction like a supportive corset. This is the office building. German railway regulations do not allow construction above trains in operation. That's why the engineers made the impossible possible. The buildings were first built upwards and then tilted over the tracks. The new Humboldt Harbor Bridge is on a bend. The trains have to brake hard here, which places an enormous strain on the bridge. But here, too, a lightweight solution of steel pipes and concrete did the trick. The bridge weighs only a fraction of what a typical railway bridge does. So far, the station doesn't yet have a station neighborhood. Until then, the glass palace of the train stands above the River Spree like a spaceship that has landed in some no man's land. The Museum of German History in Berlin. Architect Leo Mingpai and engineer Jörg Schleich are building a bridge between Baroque and modern construction. The glass roof doesn't affect the view of the architecture of the original courtyard. Light construction in the service of historic buildings. The museum roof in Berlin isn't the first of its kind.
We always want to build lightweight glazed domes put together from rods with the shapes as free as possible. So we have to address the question, how can we get a system into the length, into the arrangement of these rods? And there we have a wonderful model, namely the kitchen sieve, which is a doubly curved dome. And I can now cut that off here at the end and take it out. If I then put it on the table and press it down, then I get many squares and a cut that isn't round anymore. When I pick it up again, the angle change causes the flat sieve to become a dome again.
The Aquatoll in Neckarsulm, a revolutionary construction in 1989. Although glass domes have been around for centuries, they have generally consisted of a load-bearing construction and an additional frame for the glass. But in the Aquatoll, the load-bearing parts and the frame are one and the same thing. That's why the amount of steel needed was much less. Glass, cables, clamping plates. This facade, held up by a tensile structure, belongs to the Time Warner Center on Columbus Circle in Manhattan and measures 29 by 46 meters. The lightweight facade seems to hover between the two conventional buildings on either side.
There are basically two ways to respond to strong loads like those caused by wind or even by explosions. Either with a very strong, rigid construction, in which case we would have had to close the wall with concrete, or with a soft, yielding construction like we used in this facade. Such a tensile structure facade can bear heavy loads because it deforms and then comes back. But for that to work, the design of the small details is crucial.
That means no drill holes at the corners, because then the glass would shatter in an explosion. Instead, an elastic mounting of the panes by means of clamps is required. Architect James Carpenter is thrilled by the possibilities of the lightweight construction made in Stuttgart. What fascinates him the most is that the load-bearing cable structure is almost invisible, which means that the focus is entirely on the glass as it appears to hover in the air.
Our interests are, can you develop secure situations? People are not closed off. You still have the openness of glass and visibility and daylight. You have that sort of engagement with the urban environment through the wall, but it also is providing this very substantial safety margin or security, because it's a lightweight structure.
The world's biggest membrane roof is at Bangkok International Airport. Hundreds of thousands of square meters of triple-layered membrane with a coating to keep heat and noise away from the passenger tunnels. Thanks to the surface finish, the climate in the airport's interior is very pleasant. Membrane manufacture. Here, fibers are being made at 280 degrees Celsius by shooting polyester through injectors. The woven membranes permit elaborate coatings and can be used as a noise barrier or an insulator. The glazed side walls and the membrane let the sunlight in but keep the heat outside. An air conditioning system is largely unnecessary here. This is a big energy saver and actually based on a very simple principle.
This effect of blocking the infrared radiation is known to everyone from regular domestic irons. If you look at an iron or move your hand towards it, you can't say if it's hot or cold, because it's made of a material such as aluminium or stainless steel or something like that, which largely prevent heat radiation. You can only tell that it's hot after direct contact. Now we've taken exactly these materials, this iron effect, and applied them in a very thin layer on a textile fabric, which is 60, 70 degrees, but doesn't radiate any heat.
The terminal building. A huge glass cover encompasses the main hall. Here, too, a pleasant climate is created by alternative means. The cold groundwater under the building cools the air via a heat exchanger. The room temperature remains at a pleasant 18 to 20 degrees. The thing that is pushing its way in front of the sun like a UFO is a pneumatic air cushion that weighs no more than 3 kilograms per square meter. This cushion forms the roof of the Vista Alegre, a bull ring in the Spanish capital, Madrid. Depending on requirements, for example the weather, it can be raised or lowered. We are staying in Madrid. This is the office of the architectural group Estudio FAM. In this small space, the young people are working on a design for a unique project with which they won an international competition, a project that holds a similar significance for Madrid as the Freedom Tower holds for New York. It is a memorial for the terrorist attack on Atocha Station, Madrid's central station. On the 11th of March 2004, more than 200 people lost their lives in the attack. Thousands flooded to the scene of the tragedy and brought candles and flowers and left written messages of grief and anger. Last greetings, political statements, or simply a verse about the incomprehensible event. The result was a huge graffiti, a diary of condolence that now will be captured in the memorial, on a transparent foil that will be covered by an 11-meter-high construction made of glass blocks.
The project is attempting to capture the people's reactions to the terror attacks in Madrid. I think the project is keeping the most human and immaterial aspect of the day after the event, namely, the feelings of the people in their messages.
Since this project is a memorial that is meant to remind people of a terrible event, we don't want to use the typical heavy materials such as marble or stone with their dramatic impact. No, we want the opposite. We want conceptual and structural lightness.
For lightness, use membranes, here an ETFE foil 0.2 millimeters thick. Several hundred square meters only weigh 20 kilograms. The membrane foil is being manufactured by the Hightex company in Germany, which specializes in textile materials for lightweight construction. The Atocha Memorial is a special challenge because the only place the foil will be attached to is the ground.
Here, all we see is the membrane. The different colors show the different tension loads in the membrane. The glass is over there, and between the glass and the membrane, there will be a negative pressure which will carry the membrane, i.e., the membrane is supported by nothing but air.
Das heißt, diese Membrane ist ausschließlich über Luft getragen.
Bergemann and partners are due to design the entrance of the Freedom Tower in the same way.
The most recent development now is that the entire lower area, which is 60 meters high, will be covered with glass plates in the shape of prisms, which will reflect the light. That's this view here. In the lower area here are the entrance areas on all four sides. And there are the tensile structure facades we're working on at the moment.
A light antenna and tensile structure facades from Stuttgart. But the bomb-proof concrete base, even though it's covered in glass, remains. No sign of lightweight construction here. Is it a justified safety measure or a bastion of fear?
We had to also do a building that created new rules about safety. Not just to protect from these normal acts of, that are happening so often of terror, but for issues of fire or windstorm or the hurricane, all those things that we tend to get more of these days. And we've done things in this building that no other building has had in the United States.
On the outside, there's a steel corset as a safety zone, followed by 60 centimeters of thick concrete walls that protect the inner core, the actual area of use. The building site itself is a high security zone. The building works are only proceeding haltingly. Nobody expects the Freedom Tower to be completed before 2012. The outlines of the World Trade Center towers are going to be kept to remind people of the tragedy. It is already evident that the Freedom Tower will cost a lot more than $2 billion. A vast sum with which new lightweight methods could have been implemented for this historic project. Instead, fear prevailed. The tallest building in America, the safest skyscraper in the world, will be a stronghold, not a lightweight construction, a wasted opportunity. The Foreign Office in Berlin, a building that is open to the city, transparency and dialogue between inside and out, a glass facade by James Carpenter and Jörg Schleich. Lightweight construction wants to make structures and their functions visible. The concept works. When visitors come here, it is also because they are interested in the architecture.
I've often had the experience after lectures in adult education centres, for example, that the people came up to me the next day and said, "Now I'm looking at all the bridges and their situation and how they move." The people are interested in technical explanations of their environment. I don't do that for altruistic reasons, of course. I do it because I think engineers won't be able to create a built environment the way I envision it when it comes to motorway bridges or railway bridges if the public don't participate and demand this kind of construction.
Lightweight construction, a constant search for intelligent structures and new materials. Responsible architecture for the future, very far, very high, but seemingly weightless.